Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be doing a review of the new film, Nobody, from Bob Odenkirk. This came out about a month ago in theaters, and I was lucky enough to be able to watch a copy that was sent to me when there was a live watch-along with Bob Odenkirk and a few others from the movie. So shout out to Universal for sending me that copy to be able to watch, and now, of course, to actually review. And so this film, let's just put it this way, it is one of the best films that I've seen in a very long time. By far, the best movie that has come out so far in 2021. It'll definitely be in my top 5 at the very least for the year 2021, especially since obviously there's a lot of movies that have been in flux as far as their release schedule is concerned. But the movie in general follows the life of Bob Odenkirk, who seems to be a pretty average, normal person. And really, I'm going to stop there and say that anything I talk about from this point forward may be construed as spoilers. And so if you want to see this movie and just see the plot, unravel and unfold in a natural way without knowing too much about it, that's kind of how I was able to experience the film, then you might want to just stop watching. And I'll just let you know that the grade, of course, is going to be a huge thumbs up. But I will say that it is something that I do need to talk about, though, to give a proper review of this movie, just because of just the nature of why I like this movie and some of the best parts of this movie. So anyway, we go back to this character, Hutch Mansell, who plays, of course, by Bob Odenkirk. And he seems to be a regular, ordinary guy. The beginning of the film starts off with this really awesome Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Like every day is on the screen, and it just shows you going through his typical routine. And very quickly you start to realize the mundaneness of what's going on. So it's just a guy who gets up every day, does a little bit of working out, gets his coffee, misses the trash, all these things. And it just seems like a very boring existence. And it's very interesting because the beginning of the film, even before they start to show that, he is being investigated by a cop. There's this very awesome, there's this brilliant opening sequence introducing some of the major players who were behind making this movie. And then the camera's just stuck on Bob Odenkirk, who's just beat to hell. And all he's doing is just lighting a cigarette. And then all of a sudden there's a cat that he brings out, and he's opening up a can of tuna. He's smoking the cigarette. The cops are just like, "Who are you?" And then, of course, he says, "Well," and then it just goes straight to Nobody. So at first I was like, okay, is this going to be a movie about just a regular, ordinary person who just happens to find out that he's actually, pretty good at fighting people and fighting bad guys, that kind of thing? And then very quickly, as the movie progresses, you start to realize, oh no, this guy has a lot more going on for him. And you realize that basically this is a play on, and in many ways reminiscent of what we see in the John Wick franchise, where, John Wick, if you've never seen it before, the very first movie, a bunch of people, some Russians come in and break into his house, and they don't really know exactly who he is, and all they know is that he has a nice car, and they don't realize that he is actually a pretty fearful guy. He's a guy that you should be afraid of. And so it's very similar in this movie as well, where this guy is just known simply as Nobody, right? You don't ever really find out a whole lot more about his backstory, which I kind of like, because one, it opens up the possibility for them to do potential sequels in the future, but also if they didn't do any sequels, this film would work perfectly by itself. I'm kind of mixed on that because, as you all know, I like original stories and original movies, but just like with the John Wick franchise, if you do something really well and create a new original story and concept within this world, then I don't mind them, playing with that world and doing the very best that they can, as long as they're able to keep the actually all of the creative heads behind it in play. What's really cool about this is that the film is directed by, it says there, Ilya Nashuler. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that director was the same person that ended up doing the movie Hardcore Henry, which was a very innovative movie because the entire movie takes place from a first-person perspective. So you wake up with the character, you do all the crazy, parkour stunts and things like that. So it's just really, really cool. It does kind of get old after a while, so luckily that movie was only about 90 minutes, but the writer of this movie is actually the writer behind the John Wick franchise. And so to me, having that kind of John Wick feel to it, I think was very appropriate, but I didn't realize just how well those two minds would have worked together, right? So the mind that was able to bring us a film like Hardcore Henry and the person that was able to bring us films like John Wick and the John Wick trilogy, it really just did work very well together. And I want to say one of my favorite parts of it, other than going into the plot, because the rest of the plot just, again, unfolds with you finding out just how much of a badass Bob Odenkirk really honestly is, without ever finding too much about him. But what I really like the most about this movie, other than the story just being very good and very original, is actually the cast. This is a movie that I didn't really expect to be thrilled and amazed as far as the acting was concerned, but I knew Bob Odenkirk would be good, right? That was not, I was not surprised by his performance in the movie, but just when all of a sudden I was watching it, had done no research prior, just wanted to see it just as it was. The only person and the only name that I had ever heard of being attached to this was Christopher Lloyd, which is what piqued my interest even more so. But when I started to see people like RZA being mentioned, Michael Ironside, if you don't know him, he's been in tons of movies. Typically, he plays like a military role. I actually know him, like the main memory that I have of him from growing up was that he was the villain in the famous Jet Jackson movie. And so just to see him, and obviously he's a lot older now, and he was a little bit bigger, it was just nice to see him because he really is he's a solid actor. He's typically known for being those very extreme, again, usually military roles, but he's just also a really talented actor to boot as well. So just having him there as a supporting role was really great. And then Christopher Lloyd, man, oh man, I miss Christopher Lloyd being in tons of stuff. And this movie reminded me exactly why. So he plays the father of Bob Odenkirk's character, and you find out early on that, oh yeah, you could always interview, talking to one of his kids, he says, you could interview Grandpa, he saw some action. Then you find out later on that essentially Christopher Lloyd basically trained both him and the character played by RZA to be basically badasses. And so you find out that Christopher Lloyd himself also, even though he's old, even though he's in the old person's home, is still able to handle some weapons. And to see Christopher Lloyd just, again, he's unfortunately, pretty old at this point in his 80s, still walking around with guns and everything, was an amazing thing to see happen on screen. And so with all of that, you have great acting, you have a solid story, you have very well done direction. Again, all of those elements as far as the story work well together. Obviously, he worked well with the editor to make especially those opening scenes with the different days passing by and you seeing kind of this, this monotonous life existence really worked well together. So you had great editing. Again, obviously, kudos to the director for working with the editor on this film. You had great writing, as I said before. Cinematography was spot on. Again, nothing really to say about that. Production design worked. Everything. Again, all of the technical elements of this movie were there. Typically for films like this, they tend to fail and they tend to have issues when it comes to some of the acting or when it comes to some of the writing or even effects. But there really wasn't any of that here. If I had to really nitpick, I could say that some of the gun effects, like some of the the effects of a shot being fired, did look a little bit more on the fake side. Obviously, all films kind of struggle with that to some extent, but I feel like there were a couple of scenes where I could kind of tell that. People who are better experts on weapons than I am might be able to talk more about that in the end. But overall, I thought that they actually handled it well enough for me to, be able to suspend belief and believe that Bob Odenkirk was actually this much of a hardcore person. It's only about a 92-minute movie, so it's not very long, and it was only made for around $16 million, so a very low-budget movie, but a great story. It just goes to show you that you can make a really amazing action movie for $16 million, only it be 90 minutes long, don't have any official plans necessarily for a sequel or any following franchise movies, and just make a good film. So again, this is something that I would love to see more from Hollywood. I would love to see more films like this made for very little money, but having really good stories and getting all of these people, right? So writers like Derek Kolstad to write stories in universes that they're very comfortable with. Obviously some could argue that there's too many similarities between the universes, but the stories are so unique as well, where it just works as a standalone film. And even if you didn't know that the John Wick franchise was out there, or even if you rather did know the franchise was out there and you try to compare the two, they are different enough where they could totally cross universes. Like, again, it would be amazing if they were able to create this Nobody universe and then at one point because they have the same writer, have some kind of John Wick Nobody crossover, because that could be really, really cool. But anyway, with all of that, this film was absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend that everyone go to see this if you can. Probably would be really cool to see this in a theater with the full sound. Just to go and look ahead, just as I said before about the possible future, it says, in March of 2021, Nasholer discussed the potential of a crossover film featuring Nobody and the John Wick franchise, of which Nobody screenwriter Derek Kolstad and producer David Leitch were previously a part of, based on the film's similar tone. So apparently the director of this film is open to a crossover. That could be awesome. Looks like then he might even be open to more films with this character in this franchise. So overall, I give this film a solid A. Might be the first solid A that I've given as far as a movie coming out this year so far. though I have not seen too many films that have come out in 2021 because I've been kind of limited in that I really can't go to the theater much with Baby Thor and everything else going on. But anyway, solid A from me. The film so far has grossed around $34 million worldwide, which again on a $16 million budget means that it's doing pretty well for itself. Again, not a huge big budget film, but this is the kind of movie that, just like with John Wick, starts off where it makes a decent amount of money, or at least a fair amount to make its money back at least, and then every subsequent movie over time can make more and more money. I did a breakdown on this over on my website. By the way, check out the website if you want to vote in this year's Raven Awards, because that voting ends on Friday. So I put in for Nobody, and right now with the $34 million it's made, it's only about $3 million or so in the red. So I totally think that by the end of its run, it will have made its money back. And with only $3 million to make up at this point too, it could probably make some of that money up in PVOD, which of course it is already available in PVOD. And also I could see it make it up in Blu-ray and DVD sales. Lord knows I'm going to be getting this thing on 4K when it comes out. It'd be really cool if they were able to make some kind of exclusive 4K steelbook for this movie when it comes out at Best Buy. But anyway, have you seen Nobody? Let me know your thoughts about this movie in the comment section below. Do you think it was awesome as I did, or do you have some gripes of things that maybe I didn't notice or didn't mention? Let me know in the comment section. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Please smash the like button and smash that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my April Patreon and Subscribe Star members: Andrew Hoyle, Animation Commentator, Biffer the Hobbit, Brian P., Divex, Enrique Evangelista, Dion, Father Christopher Miller, Hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Humor and Hobbies, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Jonathan Carney, Lance, Laura Story, the Modern Major General, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Steve Glasker, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and of course, the Empress of the Universe, Tina B. And my Subscribe Star Subscribe Star members, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stan 4, John B, Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, Nevanon G. Adams, and ZK-Man. Thank you to all of my Patreon and Subscribe Star members. If you want your name shouted out at the end of every single video and live stream, check out the links in the description to find out how to sign up on Patreon and Subscribe Star. Also, you'll find out how to get access to things like giveaways of Blu-rays and 4K titles and digital codes, and also access to an exclusive podcast for my Keepers of the Bifrost, and also the Chosen of Valhalla level, where you can not only get all of those things, you also get a t-shirt and get to be featured on a live stream once a month hosted on the OMB Reviews channel. Anyway, if you want to have access to any of those things, check out the links in the description for Patreon and Subscribe Star for more information. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.